All right, so it looks like it's 9:30. So I'm going to go about and get started on this presentation here, talking about the new curriculum. So, all right, so anyway, so just kind of moving forward with the first item in here. So first of all, just kind of looking at a quick summary of the changes that we have. First thing that we're going to notice here is that we have 4 different courses, as they're listed right here on this particular screen. All right, each one of those has been increased by 1 credit hours. All right, so that's going to be one of our main changes that's going on. The other real big primary change is that our current 377 class, our communication and ethics and computer science course, is being split into 2 different courses, 277 and 377. The 277 course, that's going to be here just this technical and professional communications in CS, and CS 377 is now going to be ethical issues in computing. So the course material in the current 377 has kind of been divided up into 2 separate courses. The ethics portion is still going to be taught under a course numbered 377. The communications part is going to be switched to a new course, all right, titled 277. All right, both of these classes will be 3 credit hours. All right, so that's actually an increase in 3 credit hours that we're looking at for that. One of the things is that for our next item that's listed on here is that 461. Now 461 is currently, the way it's currently listed for everybody as a technical elective. Now, the item that actually occurs with this particular class is that the CS department will allow students to go about and petition, okay, for this course to have it count as, to replace it with another technical elective. So in essence, we actually have 5 technical electives, and 461 is a required class. If you kind of look at your DARS reports, in effect, really what's happening with that is that 461 is not a required class, but it will count as another. You can replace that for another technical elective. So it really gives us up to 6 different technical elective courses you can have with that. All right. All right, so there's going to be one of the items with that, and we'll go about and just kind of noting here that I have future screens that go about and kind of hit on all these different courses with that. The other thing to also mention in here is that the last 2 changes, one of them is that we're looking at the required hours for science courses is going to drop from 10 hours to 8, and then as a result, the free elective hours are going to drop to offset the above changes. One of the things is that the graduation degree is we want to kind of keep that as at 128 for the computer science courses. And so, we wanted to go about and adjust that, the free elective hours, to make sure we're still at 128. All right, so anyway, so let's kind of go about and look at some of the different courses and some of the changes that have occurred. The first one I'm going to here, the first slide, is kind of, most people when they're coming into computer science, they've already gone about and taken the first course, the Program Design 1. And one of the things that we've been doing over the years is that we have been allowing students to either substitute in the 112 or the 113 class for the 111 class, all right? And one of the changes that we actually did in the curriculum right now is that this is official. It's actually part of that. There's no changes in terms of what's going on to the 111, the 112, or the 13 class from anything that we have done, prior to this point in time. The big thing is that in the DARS report, if you were to have taken the 112 or the 113, you probably had to fill out a petition to make sure that that course got in there for the official 111 class. This will go about and make sure that, less paperwork for people to do if they've gone through and taken those classes in there. All right. I think just to note in here is that all these classes are going to have 3 hours of lecture, okay, 1 hour of lab, straight up the same way that things have been going on here. So no real change with that or really impact to anybody. It's more just kind of something we've been doing that's now official. All right. So the first course in which we're actually making a change to, all right, is the 211. We kind of hinted to that in terms of that summary of changes slide that we saw before. And so the big thing that's happening on here is that we're moving this course from a 2 credit hour class to a 3 credit hour class. All right, and the format that's going to happen is we're still going to keep the 2-hour lab. All right, that's going to remain the same. Now what's going to happen is that we're going to have 2 hours of lecture rather than just a single hour of lecture. All right. Part of the reason for doing this is kind of twofold. One of the things is that the course is such that students were probably doing more than just 2 credit hours worth of work in the course, and so wanted to reflect that and make sure that students are getting credit for that. The other thing that we also realized is that in classes that were kind of lab heavy, 211 is one of them, having just that single hour of lecture and all the different hour of labs kind of wasn't a mix that it didn't scale very well. And so as the department got larger and larger, a lot more sections that were in there, and trying to get that message out kind of caused some issues with that. So by doing this, by adding in that second hour of lecture, we can go about and try to give a uniform information across all the different sections. And so that's going to be something that we're looking forward to in that particular course in there. All right. Now, on this next particular slide, I've got 261, 361, and 362 kind of all together, because those pretty much are actually the exact same thing is happening to all 3 of those classes. So we'll go through and we'll kind of talk about them as a group. Currently, their credit hours are 3, and those are going to be starting in the fall semester. Will now be a 4 credit hour class. All right. There's actually not going to be any change to how the class is meeting. Okay. It's still going to be 3 hours of lecture. Okay. And then 1 hour of lab. But that's going to be the issue that's going to occur with the class, and it's just going to kind of be the same that's happening with that. All right. So again, part of the reason for this is that the lab courses, okay, these were fairly fair amount of work that was being done in the labs, and so we kind of thought students are probably doing more than just 3 hours worth of work in terms of that course. So we wanted to go about and give credit for the labs that the people are doing and giving work that's already done. So in those particular classes, moving forward, there's not really intended to be any sort of change. The contents will be in there. It's just that the amount of credit students will receive will go up by 1. All right. Now again, here's kind of talking a little bit about the 377 class. Again, I already introduced the idea with this, but just to kind of highlight with this, all right, the 277, that's going to be the communications portion of the current class that we have. This course will go about and will be 3 credit hours. The format of this course is it's going to have an hour of lecture and then 2 hours of lab. So currently the way that the material is being presented is purely just has a 2-hour lab section. Now we're going to have here an hour of lecture to kind of help tie all the different parts together. So that'll be kind of nice to go about and make sure that there's uniform communication across all the different sections of that class that would happen in there. All right, and then what's going to happen in terms of the 377 class, that is going to be purely ethical issues in computing, okay, and that is going to be still 3 credit hours. All right, now in the previous semesters, really what was happening there was that those were going to be met for 2 hours every week. We are going to increase that scheduling time up to 3 hours, all right, to match the number of credit hours with this. However, one of the things that's actually happening is that there are, during that course, meeting with the different instructors with that, there were some times you had to meet with the instructors, reviewed different presentations that you were going over, talk to them, and instead of having to schedule those meetings outside of class time, we now have an option to go about and schedule some of those times during the actual coursework in there. So that'll could make things a little bit easier in terms of getting those in there and trying to make sure that there is a time for students kind of to meet during class to work on those presentations, those group presentations that are going on in there. All right. So in terms of this particular class, the course was currently 3 hours, but again, we thought that students were probably doing more than 3 hours worth of work in the class, and so we wanted to go about and update this. And this also goes about here and splits the class into 2 separate parts. Each part can focus in on its particular section in there. Grades are dependent. They're not kind of merged between the 2. The other thing also that we did here is that by moving this course, the communications course, into the 200 level, that's going to imply that students will go about and take that course earlier in their curriculum. And in doing so, that will allow them to go about, and while they're, as sophomores, prepping for technical interviews for internships, etc. They will go about and take this course, and some of the course does go about there and talk about, hey, how do you prepare for an interview? What are different things that you need to be doing in there? How is that communication done? So those are things that we'll go about and make sure that occur in terms of that 277 class. All right. So as we go through here and we start looking at the different curricula that we have, okay, I'm kind of got this divided up into moving forward, this kind of in 4 different parts. I'm going to go through here and kind of lump together, all right, all the straight up computer science courses, okay, even though there's basically 5 different programs in there, the straight up computer science, the 3 different concentrations, and then the joint BSMS program for computer science. There is going to be 1 item in the concentrations, actually I should say 2 points in the concentration that were going to be slightly different, but those are going to be things that will have minimal impact, but we'll talk about each one as we move forward. All right, then we'll go through here and we'll talk about the data science, and again, all different 9 concentrations that we actually have in terms of the data science courses in here. Again, all the changes for that we're going to impact here by the changes in classes with computer science will equally impact all the different 9 concentrations. There is going to be 1 comment about 1 particular concentration that we do want to go about and make special notice for here. All right, and then the last thing we'll go through and we'll talk about here the computer science and design program, and then the computer science and linguistics program. All right, and so those are things we want to mention in here. Okay, so 1 item that we do want to note here is that whenever there's going to be some sort of a curriculum change, all right, students who are currently in the program, they actually have a choice. Either they're going to stay with the curriculum that they are currently in, okay, or are they going to switch over to this new curriculum? And one of the things I want to notice here is that on the slides, I end up referring to these as the previous and the new curriculum. Main reason because I know we're planning on recording this particular lecture, and we'll also go about here and then have this available so people could watch that. So if you happen to watch this after the fall or during the fall 23 semester, what is current could go about and be different in there. So pretty much what we're looking at here is when we refer to the previous curriculum, this is going to be the curriculum that we're looking at here in terms of spring 23 or earlier. All right, and then in terms of this, we'll look here at fall 23 or later in terms of our new curriculum. I guess technically really the fall 23 is when the new one comes into effect, so I guess really we could put in there summer 23 or earlier is really what's going to happen here with the previous curriculum with that. All right, but anyway, so as I mentioned in here, all the students will need to make this choice, and so during kind of sometime in the early part of the fall semester, all right, we're going to go about here and have students are going to make a choice. Will you stay with the previous curriculum? Are you going to switch to the new curriculum? All right, so that's going to be something we'll look at in there. And you'll go about and you will see notifications coming out from the the Student Affairs Office in Computer Science to help guide with this. Now, part of the reason why we want to do these changes in fall 23 is that the earlier that somebody goes about and makes a decision, this is what I want to go with, this is going to be the coursework that I'm using towards graduation, the easier it is for the student to plan what courses they need to take. It's easier for the student to go about and to talk to advisors, to talk to faculty, to make sure that they are on track to meet the graduation needs of the curriculum that they're going to go in here. All right, so it's oftentimes we want to look at this and have students, okay, let's go through and make this choice and move forward. Now, if it does turn out that a student kind of realizes, wait a minute, I think I made a bad choice, there is going to be ways that we can go about and possibly undo some of those choices in there. But one of the things is that in terms of the fall 23, when we do this, we're going to try to make this very simple, easy process to go through and get this done. To switch around what curriculum you're going to graduate under, easier than it normally is. And so after we've kind of done that, so when we're not in that fall, early part of that fall 2023 semester, there'll probably be a couple more steps that you would need to do. In terms of this, certainly will not be where the department is reaching out to you and saying, hey, which one are you going to do with it? And we will take care of the paperwork. changes after that, kind of making sure that paperwork is all done, the onus really falls on the student in that case. All right, so we start looking at this with the with these curricular changes. One of the things is that we should note here is that the changes that are happening to the courses will occur in fall 23. So this means starting in fall 23, okay, CS 211 will be a 3-credit hour class. All right, CS 261, 361, 362 will be 4-credit hour classes. So that's going to happen fall 23 moving forward. All right, also in that particular semester, if you go about and you take CS 377, it will only contain the information regarding ethics. All right, 277 will only contain the communications information with this. All right, so this is something that we were going to go about and note in here. And so students who end up staying in that previous curriculum and the course hours have increased, one of the things is that by default, any of these extra hours are going to count as free electives. That's going to be the default choice of what's going to happen with those pieces in there. All right, so there's kind of the idea that's happening with this. One of the things I'd mentioned is that there was going to be a shifting in probably a reduction in free elective hours. Well, it's kind of the same kind of idea that's being shown here. We have additional hours that people are taking from these required courses, and so that will end up, we still have 128 hours to graduate. So since you've taken more CS hours, the other hours that you would need to get to that 128 are decreased. All right, so there's kind of the idea kind of moving forward with that. All right, so again, as we're looking at this, we have this question: are you going to stay with the previous curriculum? Are you going to switch to the new curriculum? Now, when we do this, some of these choices are pretty simple and obvious, okay? If you've already taken all of these courses that we're making a change to, you probably want to keep with the previous curriculum, okay? Yes, there is going to be a tweak that occurs to the math courses, okay? I'm not sorry, the math courses, the science courses in there, where they go about and they drop the total hours from 10 down to 8. However, if you do switch over to the new curriculum, you are going to need to make sure that you make up different hours that you do go about here and have to take, get credit hours for 277, et cetera. And so those are going to be some things that are probably going to be, won't be in your benefit to switch to the new curriculum. So if you've already gone about and taken these classes, most likely you'll probably want to keep with this previous curriculum, all right? The other simple choice is going to be, if you haven't taken any of these courses, okay, you probably want to switch to the new curriculum, all right? You're going to go about and get credit for those extra credits anyway. Might as well have them count in there. You pick up some of the benefits and the bonus of being on this new curriculum, making it uniform for you. Advising will be more obvious as to what's going on. So it probably makes a lot more sense to go through and to switch to the new curriculum in there, all right? Now, the question comes down to is that some choices are not going to be easy, all right? Or I should say less easy. So if you've already taken some of those particular courses, then you're going to have to think about, what works out best for me? And probably the thing you're going to need to do is you need to kind of lay out, all right, what does it look like? What is my graduation? What does my coursework look like towards graduation under both options, okay? And which seems to have the more positive benefits for you, all right? So those are going to be some of the things that we wanted to look at in here. So if you've taken some of those classes, probably want to lay out and look at both of these options, see what appears best, all right? And there's going to be times in which you'll be able to sit down, talk with advisors, okay? We'll probably go about and run some workshops in order to go through and try to help people make these decisions, see what works out best in there. So more of this stuff is going to be coming forward at this point in time. One of the things, just to kind of let you know, is that this is being recorded here on Thursday. We've been doing these presentations all this week here. So this is Thursday, March 30th. So we're 1 week after spring break in the spring semester, okay? These changes were actually approved at the Thursday afternoon in the week before spring break. So, there was basically 2 days, two school days between the first time we did this presentation and the changes went into effect. All right, so we've been pretty much trying to be very proactive in trying to get this information out to students as to what's happening with this. Until they were approved by the university, we really couldn't say anything about this. So we're really trying to go about here and get this information out as fast as we can here. All right, so one of the things, let's go about here and start looking at the different impacts to these different the different programs and kind of see what happens in here. So as I mentioned, the 5 different programs in computer science, okay, they're all pretty much going to be similar in terms of what's happening with them. All right, all these programs need 128 hours to graduate. All right, bottom line, what's happening with this is that the courses, if you look at the requirements in there, the number of CS courses had been increased by 7 hours. Okay, adding in 1 hour for 4 courses, adding in the 277 3 credit hours, there's going to be that 7-hour increase. Other thing that's going to occur in here is that we will have our science courses, the electives in there, the science electives. Total amount of hours is going to be decreased by 2. So this means in order for us to go about and to keep that 128, okay, we added in plus 7 CS, minus 2 in the science hours, okay, minus 5 in the free elective hours. So those are really kind of the changes that are happening in there to go through and keep that 128 hours that are needed to graduate in there. All right, so one of the things is that we do want to highlight, and what this really means is that if you are in the new curriculum, okay, there are now 7 additional credit hours, all right, required in CS. So we've got in here the 211, the 261, the 361, the 362. Each of those courses increases by 1 for 4 extra hours, and then the new 277 class, 4 extra hours in there. All right, so this means that all students who switch to this new curriculum must have the 7 additional hours in CS in order to graduate. All right, so in looking at this, if you're a current student in there and you're thinking about switching over, you're going to have to make sure, how do I go about and get these additional 7 hours? Well, if you haven't taken any of the courses that we've been talking about so far, the 211 or any of those courses in here, you'll get those hours by taking those new courses. However, if you've already taken some of those particular courses, all right, you're going to have to figure out how I'm going to offset this. All right, and so the answer could come down that, wait a minute, switching over to this new curriculum may not be best for you. Okay, one of the things that happens here is that you cannot go back and retake courses that you've already have credit for in order to go about and to get the additional credit hours on that. All right, so this will mean that somehow you're going to have to go about and take additional CS courses. All right, could be technical elective courses. We go about here, and we've also done at the 200 level. There's been some boot camp classes that have been offered. All right, those would count in there. Even if, we have a training for undergraduate TAs, a 1 credit hour class that we do for that. That could be an hour that we could go about and add on there. So there are going to be some possibilities to do this, but that's going to be something that you need to think about. And so switching over to the new curriculum, you have to make sure that you've got this additional 7 hours of CS courses before you can graduate. And for many students, if you're close to graduation, that's not something you probably want to add on, okay? All right, now let's talk about here the operating systems class. This is the CS 461, okay? As I kind of mentioned before, this class, first of all, there's no changes to what's happening with this particular class in the terms of the format. The way it's been taught before will be currently the way it's being taught, all right? The current idea is that this is, if you look at your DARS report, Operating Systems 461 is a required class. Pretty much the inside of computer science, okay? If you go about here and don't want to take 461, you could fill out a petition to go through and to have that replaced with any technical elective, okay? To basically take an additional tech elective in terms of that. And so technically what this has really been done for the vast majority of students is that 461 is not required, but instead of taking 5 technical electives, you take 6 technical electives. Well, the new curriculum, all right, has gone about and basically implemented that idea. All right. Now there is going to be one caveat, and that's going to be with the computer systems concentration, which I'll talk about here on the next slide. But in terms of for everybody else, okay, pretty much what happens with this is that if you kind of look at our total, this has no impact on the total number of CS courses that you would take. But if you're kind of looking down at the, in between what's required versus what's technical elective, there is going to be a slight shift, okay, because we are basically moving one class from being required course and saying, okay, that can be, falls into that, those 3 credit hours are being moved into the technical elective courses so that you can take pretty much anything, any technical elective course instead of 461, the operating systems class. All right. Now, the one thing that comes up here is that for the computer systems option, all right, that is going to be actually operating systems is kind of a bread and butter course in that particular program. If you're graduating in that, I'm sure you want to go through and take that particular course. One of the things that we have right now is that if you do look at the requirements for computer systems option, there's going to be this section of the course which says select 4 technical electives from a particular list. Okay, here's going to be that particular list that we're going to have in here. One of the things that we're going to be doing is that 461 is going to be added into that list, okay, for the computer systems option. So it's probably going to be one, if you are a member, a student in the computer systems concentration, you probably are going to want to take the 461 anyway as part of this to help meet into this technical elective list. In terms of that, it's certainly among some of the popular courses that students take in terms of that list. All right, so there's going to be a few things to kind of mention with that. All right, so let's go about here. So those are kind of the things that we've done with the CS courses. Looking here at our science hours, all right, in the previous curriculum, so what students who are currently enrolled in the program, what they have is that they have to go about here and have 2 courses from this following list, and they also have to have 10 credit hours. All right, so those are going to be the 2 requirements that they have. And so what happens is that, as it turns out, currently only the chemistry classes actually offer 2 classes that are 5 hours each. So many students, when they go through and they take their science classes, they may, if they don't take both chemistry classes, they're going to be short 10 hours in there. So they have to go about and make up some additional coursework that they need to do, and computer science has a list that would be available, and they can go about and they can look at. This is linked to from the CS webpage. Talk to your advisor about this. They can go about and give you ideas on how to make up those 2 hours in there. And so any students who are keeping with the previous curriculum, they are going to need to take these 2 classes, plus make sure they have 10 credit hours. All right, so no changes to that going forward. But one of the advantages and one of the big things that I think people might think about when trying to switch over to the new curriculum, and one of the real benefits of switching over to the new curriculum, is that the science hours is going to be that you, instead of having 10, it only is 8. All right, so this means that students take 2 courses from the list and they have completed all those science hours. All right, now if a student does happen to go about and take one of the chemistry classes for 5 credit hours rather than 4, any extra hours that they would get from the chemistry classes, those would go about and count for free electives. All right, so it really comes down to you need to go about and take kind of 2 courses from this list in there. And that's going to be kind of a nice thing, because I know a lot of students just struggle to try to figure out, okay, what's the additional coursework I want to take in order to make up those additional hours. That question now goes away. So it's kind of a nice thing that's going to happen with that. Okay, all right, and so as we mentioned in here, our free elective hours are going to be dropping by 5, and in most of the computer science concentrations, that means going from 14 credit hours down to 9. There's actually going to be one of our concentrations in which they don't have 14 free elective hours, and we'll talk about that here in a moment, okay? And so as we mentioned in here, students still need 128 hours to graduate. So if we look at this, we end up having plus 7 hours from the increase in terms of the total hours from CS, 2 hours dropped off from the science electives, and so this means is that in order to kind of balance out the scales, okay, subtract 5 hours from the free electives, that'll give us that 128 hours to graduate. All right. Now, as I want to mention in here, is that in the human-centered computing, okay, there's still going to be a drop of 5 hours, okay? So if we notice here, they actually go about, and where they're currently at, instead of having 14 free elective hours, they have 8 free elective hours, all right? So they end up dropping down here from 8 hours to 3. It's still going to be that -5 that we kind of see in here. That's really the magic number with this. Part of the thing that really happens, or this distinction, is that we do have a category of courses referred to as our, here I've just written it down as HSSA. That actually stands for Humanities, Social Sciences, and Arts Electives, okay? The main CS program and most of the concentrations have a total of 6 hours of those classes, whereas the human-centered computing concentration actually has 12, all right? And so if we notice in here that difference from the 14 free elective hours to the 8 free elective hours, difference of 6, that's reflected here between the difference of 6 in terms of this program. All right? So there's kind of where that idea falls into the difference between those. All right. So, so what happens with this is that if we're thinking about all classes are 3 credit hours, I know that's not the case, but let's just kind of go with that for right now. Most of the CS students will end up taking 3 classes for free electives. Students who are in the human-centered computing will only take 1 class of free electives, okay, because the other 2 are actually kind of in that subset of the humanities, social sciences, and arts classes. All right, so there's going to be one of the things that happens there. All right, so that's going to be kind of looking at that information there with the free elective hours. All right, one item that I do want to kind of point out here, so I've kind of talked about a few things, but one thing I want to specifically mention in here is notes about the previous curriculum and CS 377, okay? So students who are staying in the previous curriculum, they are required to take 377, but note that they are not required to go about and to take the 277. 277 is not a required class. You do not have to take that, all right? So this means if you have not already taken 377, when you go through and you take the 377 course, you would actually miss out on those communication topics in there. I do feel that those topics are kind of important topics, okay? I would encourage people to go about and to take those. And if you do go about, and people staying in the previous curriculum, all right, that those hours will go about and count as free electives, okay? One of the things, though, is that if you were staying with the previous curriculum and you've already have taken 377, so you took that prior to fall 23, you're not going to be allowed to take 277 because, well, you've already covered that material, all right? So you've already gotten that material, so you won't be able to take that particular course with that. All right, so there's going to be a few things just kind of looking at this material. And so here with staying with the previous curriculum, okay, you are not required to go about and take the 277, okay? You know, if you might want to, because it is going to be good information for communications, to help for internships, for interviewing, etc. So you might want to do that. And so if you do have the free elective hours, that choice is yours. I would encourage it, but again, that choice is yours. All right, so there's kind of the last thing, kind of looking here at kind of our CS courses. All right, so now what I want to go through is I want to look at the remaining, basically the 3 other programs that are kind of on this list here: the data science, computer science and design, computer science, and linguistics. All right, so the first thing that we're going to notice in here is that in the data science program, okay, students do have to go about and take 211. 211 has increased by an hour. It's gone from 2 credit hours to 3 credit hours. And so that means that we're going to have some offset, pull a credit hour from somewhere. One of the things that we recently realized is that Engineering 100 is actually counting towards the 120 hours to graduate. And even though it clearly states it's not going to, it does. So DARS kind of got the way it was entered in our system was wrong, Okay, and so one of the things that's actually happening here is that we are going through and we're fixing that error of having engineering 100 count for credit, and that is going to be, while we're fixing that, that's basically offset by this change in 211. So that's going to be kind of a nice thing that kind of works out fairly well with that stuff in there. Okay. One of the things that we'll also want to notice inside of here is that with the data science, okay, students are will have to contain, will have, do take the 377 class, okay? And again, just as we kind of mentioned in here, students sticking in the previous curriculum for computer science, okay? Students in the data science program are not required to take CS 277. If you have free electives, you're more than welcome to take it, and you could go about and take that course in there. So that's going to be one of the things that's kind of a choice that's up to you there. In decoupling the two classes, instead of basically forcing all the data science to take the course, we figured, all right, we'll leave it up to you. Depending upon what concentration you might be in, some of those concentrations have a fair amount of communications information already inside of them. So it didn't make sense to have a blanket statement to say, yes, this is going to be a new requirement, because it could duplicate some of the material you might see in other stuff. One of the things is that we do want to go about and make a comment in here is that, again, anybody who is taken CS 377 prior to fall 23, they will not be allowed to take CS 277. And so that's going to be pretty much for all of our students in whatever curriculum you might be in there. All right, so there's going to be an item to go through and to make a choice with that. All right, so there's going to be a few things with this. So, so in terms of data science, there's not really much of a distinction between the two. All right, in terms of that, there really is the 377 doesn't really have much of an impact, except knowing that students who haven't taken the 377 course, all right, when they take it, they will only get that ethics information, which was deemed, would be fine with that. You do have an option to pick up an additional course in this computer science communication for technical elective interviews or for kind of technical writing, things along those lines. Those are going to be some stuff that's going to be inside of there. So you can pick those up. And then, like we said, that the 211 course is kind of being offset by that fix in the to engineering 100, that fix that was going to happen in there. Okay, all right. And so one item that I did want to make a comment about here is that we do want to mention in here with one more curriculum. And so there is going to be here there was a change, kind of a separate change to the concentration in urban planning and public affairs in data science. So data science with urban planning and public affairs concentration. There has been a course list restriction in terms of the courses allowed for that. All right. The total number of hours, which was 12, has not changed. All right. The faculty in that particular field, all right, in looking through the different courses, they actually realized that they probably had too many different options for the students to go about and to take for this concentration. And so one of the things that they realized is that they wanted to go through here and see which were going to be the courses that made more sense for somebody who was studying data science. So they have gone about and restricted the overall course list to make sure that there's going to be courses that really go about and supplement the idea of what you'd be studying in terms of data science with that. I actually don't have that information here on the slides, but that information will become readily available in order as the information is put out there. All right. So anyway, so that's going to be the information for data science. Now we want to move on to CS and design. Okay. So in CS and design, a couple things that we want to notice here is that originally the current program, all right, the program that everybody here is in terms of, spring 2023 and earlier, is going to require 122 hours to graduate. Okay, we've gone about, and the new curriculum is actually going to go about and switch so that it will be require from 120 to 122 based on whatever courses that you're going to take in there. All right. So the first thing that we wanted to notice is that in the current curriculum, there were two changes that occurred. The first one was going to be the change to CS 211. That got increased by 1 hour. All right. So if we kind of look at that, that would go about and take us up to 123 hours. But one of the things that we also did here is that the CS 261 class, which is currently a 3-credit hour class, that was moved from being a required class to now being on a list of selective classes in there. All right? So that goes about here, and that drops down 3 hours from our total curricula. That goes about here and takes it from the 122, the +1 with the 211 in there, from 123. Subtracting 3 off brings us down to the 120. All right? And so now what we want to do is, in order to see where those variable hours comes in, we want to look at the selective hours. Okay? So the selective list, all right, as is being shown right here, was you had to go about here and take 2 courses, okay, for a total of 6 hours. All right. Now, once we've gone about here, and if we add in CS 261, and we've gone about here and added in some changes, so that now some of the courses in terms of that particular course list are now 3-credit hours, and some of them are 4-credit hours. When students go about and take this particular as a select their different classes, if they go about here and select 2 3-hour classes, they'd be able to graduate with 120 hours. If they take 1 3-hour, 1 4-hour, they would graduate with 121 hours. If they take 2 4-credit hours, they would go about and graduate with 122 credit hours. All right, so there's going to be kind of this distinction about what's happening with this program in here. So there's going to be kind of our main thing that happened with our CS and design concentration in there. All right. So the last one we want to kind of mention in here is going to be CS and linguistics. Okay. So with CS and linguistics, all right, previous curriculum requires 120 hours to graduate. The new curriculum also requires 120 hours to graduate, so no change with that. We've went through and we have increased our CS 211 class by 1 hour, and so this means there needs to be an offset, and so there are free elective hours, and those total amount of free elective hours that students are going to take is going to decrease by 1 hour. All right? And so again, if we're trying to look at, okay, do I switch to the new curriculum? Do I stay to the, stay with the previous curriculum? All right? Kind of, I would say it kind of looks at here, have you taken CS 211 or not? Okay? If you've already taken CS 211, you probably want to stay with the previous curriculum. Okay? If you still need to take CS 211, you probably want to switch to the new curriculum. All right? So those are going to be things that are going to happen with this. If you do stick with the previous curriculum, all right, and you do take that 3-credit hour 211, means you're in the previous curriculum, you haven't taken 211, that extra hour will count as a free elective. Okay? So in essence, it basically is the same thing as switching. Okay, so it really doesn't have a whole lot of impact on stuff. But those are a few things to kind of note in terms of that program in there. All right, and so with that, that's all the different